Everyone, and welcome to the September 2025 Hero Studio Card Kit of the Month. Let's take a closer look at all that's included in this month's kit. First up, we have the 6x8 Fall is My Favorite clear stamp set. This charming stamp set is filled with wonderful fall images. You have playful squirrels, plump pumpkins, autumn leaves, and acorns, and so much more. Also included are the coordinating dies. These dies will cut out all of the images in the Fall is My Favorite stamp set. This stamp set is perfect for creating charming fall scenes filled with seasonal warmth and whimsy. Next, we have the Treehouse die set. This die set contains several dies that allow you to create carvings or designs in the tree trunk, as well as this removable oval die that allows you to create an opening for the squirrel nest or remove to have a solid tree trunk instead. This die beautifully complements the images in the Fall is My Favorite stamp set. The squirrels look wonderful on the branches or inside their little nest. Also included in the kit is 10 sheets of colored cardstocks. These are half sheets, so 8.5 by 5.5. The colors included are truffle, merlot, cinnamon, terracotta, carrot, coral, bellini, beeswax, saffron, and tuscan. Also included in the kit is a yard of brown twine, which is perfect for adding a cozy seasonal touch to your designs. And last is a pack of sunset enamel dots. These are perfect for adding a little accent or embellishment to your cards. Now that we've seen everything included in the card kit, let's create a card. I'm going to start with the Fall is My Favorite stamp set, and we're going to start with that string stamp right there. Now, because that is a thin and spindly stamp, I found that it's actually easier to die cut that string first and then use the negative space to help me line up the stamp. So I'm just going to pop that stamp into the opening in the cardstock, and then once I get it in place, I'll pick it up with my MISTI. And I've actually created a jig here, which will allow me to stamp this die cut with that string image and a second one very easily. I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple other images though before I stamp. I've got the pile of leaves, the sleeping squirrel, and the strand of leaves. I'm going to pick up those stamps as well with my MISTI, pop in that string die cut, and then go ahead and ink up all my stamps and stamp them. I am using watercolor paper here, and I am stamping my images in intensified black ink, which is a waterproof ink. I'm going to go ahead and clean my stamps, remove the sleeping squirrel and pile of leaves, remove the strand of leaves. I'm going to reposition that and stamp a second set, but leave that string stamp in place. Now I'm going to take my panel and die cut a second string die cut, and then I'll pop it into my jig and stamp my second string. So once I get that die cut in place, I'll ink up my two stamps and stamp them. And again, I'm using intensified black ink, which is a waterproof ink, and I am stamping onto watercolor paper. I'm actually using Hero Art's Luxe White watercolor paper today. Now that my images are stamped, I'm ready to watercolor them in. I'm going to start by pressing my reactive inks down onto a palette here. This is just a piece of plastic. I started with root beer, fruit punch, creamsicle. Now I'm on lemon drop. Then I'll finish up with a little bit of green apple and blue raspberry. If you don't have a piece of plastic like I do to use as a palette, you can also use acetate or a laminated sheet of paper. Now that my palette is all ready to go, I do want to point out that I'm using a water brush to paint my images in, but the barrel of my water brush is empty. I don't actually like filling my barrel up with water. I feel like that just ends up releasing too much water while I paint. So you can see me dipping my brush into the little bowl of water in the upper right corner. And I do want to point out that I actually use very little water when I watercolor these images, just enough to get that ink to kind of move over the surface. Now I'm moving on to my orange shade and coloring in some of my leaves with that. Then I'll mix up a red. I do add a little bit of the root beer to it, so it's a slightly darker color. And then I'll paint in several leaves with that kind of red color as well. Once I finish that, we'll move on to a green shade. Now for the green shade, I mix three colors together: the blue raspberry, the green apple, and even a little bit of that root beer to kind of darken it up and make it more of a sagey, slightly olivey green. Once I finish coloring the remaining leaves green, I'm ready to make my squirrel color. Now my squirrel color, I'm mixing four colors together, all the warm colors: the fruit punch, creamsicle, lemon drop, and even some of that root beer to kind of create this rust color. Now that I've finished mixing and I got the right shade, I'm going to now watercolor my squirrel all over with that, well, almost all over. I'll leave the bottom part of his tail white, which we'll actually end up making a little bit cream once we finish that kind of base color. Now that I finished coloring him with that kind of terracotta color, I'm going to add a little bit of brown here. I mixed brown and fruit punch together, and I'm just using it to add some shading, some darkening to his tail and his body so he looks a little bit more dimensional. Once I finish adding that shadow area in, I'll then lighten the terracotta color that I made for the body of the squirrel. Just by adding more water, we'll lighten it, and I'll use that watered down color to kind of color the white areas, so he's not just stark white. So basically, his face and the bottom of the tail becomes a little cream. With my images all dry, I went ahead and die cut them out with the coordinating dies. I do have a little tip for cutting these leaves out though. I'm going to line up the die, then use, of course, some tape to hold it in place. And the thing I found that really helps is when you feed it into your die cutting machine, feed it in stems first. And that just helps so the die doesn't shift on you and you get a more aligned die cut. Now we're going to move on creating a tree trunk for our card. I have some of the truffle cardstock included in the card kit. I went ahead and die cut the tree with that opening for the squirrel's nest out. Then I grabbed this sheet of fawn cardstock, which is slightly like a tan color, and I'm going to use that for the back of our tree. And I die cut that, of course, without the oval, so it's completely solid. Now on the truffle tree trunk, we're going to stamp our sentiment. I just stamped it in intensified black ink, and we actually now have all our parts ready together to create this card. I'm going to start by adhering an A2 panel of cinnamon cardstock to our card front here, and once I get that stuck down, we will move on to creating our tree trunk. I am going to first adhere our pile of leaves inside the tree trunk. I'm going to use a little bit of liquid glue to kind of hold that in place. Once I get those leaves in place, we're ready to add our squirrel. I'll add a little bit of liquid glue to the bottom of the squirrel and then place him on top of that pile of leaves. Now that those images are adhered in place, we're going to grab some foam adhesive and start adding it to the back side of our tree trunk, and then we'll remove the backing and stick it on that tan base. Once those two pieces are stuck together, I'm going to go ahead and adhere the tree to the card as well as these two strings. And once those strings are in place, I'm going to start adhering my leaves right on top of the die cut, just using liquid glue for this. But for some of the leaves that hang off of the tree, I will pop them up with foam adhesive. So here you can see I actually have foam adhesive on these last remaining leaves, and I'm adding a little bit of glue to the top of the leaf so it can hold on to the hanging string, and that will actually hold that string up as well because it'll now be attached to the leaves with foam adhesive. And here's the finished card. I adore the fall colors in this card, and just how cute is that squirrel resting on his leaves in his cozy squirrel nest. Hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. I can't wait to see what you guys create with this kit.